All right, everybody. Zoro's got a plan. Okay, listen. Not the worst option on the table, right? Like, there's a lot of characters in ELBAPH right now. I gotta be honest, Zoro is not at the top of my list for characters that I'm really expecting to have a really well thought out plan, but he's not at the very bottom either, right? If Robin or Jinbei were the ones that said, I got a plan. Like, Jinbei's all tied up, and he's like, all right, guys, we've been tied up for a little while, but I've had a lot of time to think of a strategy, and I got one. And I'd be like, all right, boss Jinbei, I'm all in. What do you got? If Robin was like, okay, guys, I fought against Summers, and I know how to get out of these thorns, and I know how to save the library and all the children, I'd be like, all right, Robin, you have proven the track record, okay? Zoro. Listen, could be worse, right? Like, if it was Luffy, and I love you, Luffy, but if it was Luffy that was just like, hey, guys, I got a plan. I'm like, does it involve punching people really hard? It involves punching people really hard. I'd be like, all right. I mean, hey, that might work, but we have to wait till the end of the arc. We're not at the end of the arc, Luffy, all right? You can't just punch your way out of every problem in the arc, only the last problem of the arc, all right? So we got to save that one for when Luffy punches Emu really hard, okay? So, we got Zoro's plan. Now, it's probably going to involve something with swords or something with booze or some combination therein. So I thought it would be a pretty good idea to go back, and I did a live stream a couple days ago where we were going over the chapter, and thanks to all the fans and everybody helping me out here, we drew up a list here of some of Zoro's greatest and maybe not so greatest plans, all right? This is a list of Zoro's stratagems, and I'll be honest with you, some of these I forgot. Some of these are actually pretty good plans, and then some aren't either. It's more of a balancing act, if nothing else, okay? But, like, let's just go through this. Now, a lot of Zoro's plans kind of maybe fall in more of the gambling category, okay? For example, we have the scene at Loguetown when Zoro acquires the Sandai Katetsu. He finds it in Ippon Matsu's shop. Tashigi identifies it as this Wazumono graded blade. It's a Meito, but it's also cursed. And Zoro is like, okay, I have an idea. I'm gonna throw it up in the air, put out my arm, and just really hope it doesn't slice it clean off. And so he does that, and it doesn't. So he takes it. So that did technically work out for Zoro. I mean, he ended up getting not one but two free swords out of that exchange, so it did work out. But it was also like a form of gambling, and it's like, can you say a plan is a good plan if the result just relies on dumb luck, right? Like, if you were to take all the money you had to a casino and you were like, all right, I'm going to bet on one number on the roulette wheel, and they spin the wheel and it actually comes up on the number and you end up winning a boatload of money. It's like, see? That was a good plan. Yeah, that's how I play all of my D&D characters. I freely admit, those are not good plans, all right? That's just gambling. That's just like, all right, tell you what, I'm going to run into the active volcano. Let me just roll really quick. Hey, I got a 20. That was a great plan. It's like, no, you got really lucky. That was nothing else, okay? So I don't know. If you consider gambling a good plan or not, or something else altogether, like maybe it belongs in a different category, okay. Now, the next one, though, this is probably Zoro's most famous plan, or infamous plan, depending on how you want to go about it, right? It's the one that most people brought up, okay? And it was during Little Garden, when Nami, Vivi, and Zoro ended up getting captured in Mr. 3 Galdino's wax, candle, birthday set, or whatever that thing was. The giant jack-o'-lantern cake thing made out of wax, right? And so they were trapped in this cake set, and the wax was raining down, and they were slowly going to turn into wax statues. Broggy was also pinned to the ground with these wax daggers, okay? And Zoro just kind of looks at Broggy, and he just looks at his swords, and he's like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You're gonna get up and rip your arms apart with those daggers, and I'm gonna take my swords and I'm gonna slice off my own feet. I'm gonna slice off my own feet, not so I could be freed, but so that I can fight. And so he does that. I mean, at least he tries. The angle was kind of off, so it was sort of hard to, like, stab himself. So he takes out his swords, and he's about to do it, and he makes it, like, halfway makes it about halfway before he just starts bleeding profusely and he can't actually manage to cut off his feet. And so by that point, the wax had solidified enough so they really couldn't move anymore. But do not worry, ladies and gentlemen, do not worry, for Zoro had a backup plan. He had a backup plan in case the cutting off your own feet at the ankle stratagem did not work. And it was like, all right, well, if we're not getting out of this, we might as well pose. Make a cool-ass pose. Imagine if that's the way Zoro went out right there. Like, that's how he died, right? All that was left of him was, like, he just suffocates in this wax statue, but then that statue remained on Little Garden for the rest of time. And every time a new journey and a new pirate crew landed there, they saw the statue of Zoro, and I guess Nami and Vivi as well. But they looked at Zoro's and like, wow, I don't know about the other statues, but that statue, cool-ass pose. That guy knew what he was up to, right? Yeah. So cutting off your own feet so you could go fight better, I'm just going to throw that in the category of not a great plan. Not a great plan. In fact, I would dare to even put that in the horrible plan strategy, which would probably result in you dying of blood loss. I mean, like, you always got to imagine, like, how Zoro would have even fought without legs, or with, I guess he still has his legs technically, just without feet. So like he cuts off his own feet and then like, I don't know, he just jumps in the air, uses his swords to like walk around on the ground. He's just, you know, doing weird maneuvers and stuff like that. Like, I don't know, like grappling onto trees and spinning around and attacking people that way. Yeah, so not a great plan. Then we have, oh, this was fun. When Nami was sick after she had been bitten by the Kestia after they were leaving Little Garden, they had to put someone in charge of navigating the Going Merry. Of course, there was only one man for the job that stepped up for this, and that, of course, was Roronoa Zoro, a man that is well known far and wide across the four blues and both sides of the Grand Line, from the heights of the Red Line all the way up to Skypiea, all the way down to Fishman Island, and into the center of Blue Planet itself, as a man that knows where he's going and where he's been. He knows how to navigate, ladies and gentlemen. And so his strategy for navigating, his plan, as it were, was to follow a cloud. Hey, look, there's a cloud. That's, like, in the general direction we're going. I don't need to address the log pose. Nami even gave him the log pose. By the way, I don't know if you've seen the log pose. It's a pretty simple device to use. It literally has one arrow that you just need to follow. All right? And Zoro is like, yeah, I don't need that, though. There's a cloud in the sky. We'll just follow that. Giant cyclone happens, all right? So that wasn't a good plan. That wasn't a good plan. All right. Now, when the crew does arrive at Drum, there's another plan that Zoro has. You know, at this point, the wounds on his legs have healed sufficiently enough, which, by the way, now I just realized that the whole reason they were at Drum Island to begin with was to find a doctor for Nami. They could have also probably worked that in with Zoro as well. Zoro just having to, like, slice his legs almost apart. And remember, there was a whole thing when Zoro got slashed by Mihawk at the Baratier. They tried to, like, haphazardly, like, stitch him back up, and that was, like, a whole point at Arlong Park. You know, Arlong was, like, you know, kind of terrified at, like, the mangled way that Zoro was, like, is like, oh my god, how does he move with a wound like this? And then later on, when the doctor was, like, stitching him up, like a proper doctor at Kokoyashi was stitching up Zoro, he's like, you're an idiot. What made you think this was actually going to heal on its own? You're a moron, right? Like, you needed actual medical help, right? They could have done something similar where Zoro's legs were all slashed up, and he's like, oh, I need a doctor to help me at Drum Island, right? So no, the wound just kind of heals on its own after only, like, I guess a few days. Whatever, okay. And then Zoro decided to celebrate by being healed up by going for a nice midwinter swim in a lake of very frigid water. Yeah. So he does that and ends up getting lost on the other side of the shore and wanders barefoot, bare-chested, with nothing but just a pair of pants through the frigid winter island of Drum until he just randomly runs into Usopp and Vivi. He beats up some of Wapple's minions and takes one of their coats. But yeah, and then later on at the end of the story, you find out, at the end of the arc, you find out that Karu actually wanted to jump in to save Zoro. And Karu, despite being a duck, ducks are usually pretty well adapted for the cold. Karu is a desert duck, so he's not really well adapted to that. He freezes in the water trying to save Zoro, and Nami beats the shit out of Zoro for that. Like, oh, so it was your fault then, right? So that was a funny little scene. I think that was actually the scene we found out that Chopper can talk to animals, and he actually, like, translated what Karu was saying. Zoro at first was just like, oh, yeah, that duck jumping in the water and getting frozen. He was kind of stupid. And then Chopper translates what was happening, and then it's like, oh, so it's your fault, dumbass. All right, so yeah, not a great strategy, not a great plan. Moving on to Alabasta, this is one of the ones I actually forgot about. On their way to Alabasta, the group runs into Mr. Tu Bon Clay, who displays his ability of the Mane Mane no Mi, allowing him to transform into all the different members of the crew. And so after he leaves and the crew realizes, oh, wait a minute, that's a member of Baroque Works, that's not good. He has the ability to transform into any one of us now except for Sanji, and so that could really mess us up later. Zoro is the one that specifically says, well, now that we know his power, we can strategize. We have a plan. There's another instance of Zoro having a plan, all right? Actually, another instance at the end of the chapter where Zoro announcing he has a plan. All right, that's cool. So, Zoro's plan is actually a pretty good one. Let's make a mark on our arms, and then let's wrap it up with bandages. And so then whenever we need to run into somebody and we need to prove that it's really you, you can remove the bandage and see what's underneath it, okay? But if that person doesn't know what's under the bandage, clearly they're not really a member of the Straw Hats, right? And this actually does come into play much later into Alabasta, where Vivi runs into Usopp out in the desert outside of Alubarna, and at that point, the Baroque Works did know that, like, oh yeah, they seem to have, like, some bandages wrapped around all of their arms, and so that's what Bon Clay thought was the marker, like, oh, I'll just around my arm, and that'll prove that it's me. However, that's not the actual code that they came up with. Well, Zoro's the one that came up with it, and so Vivi was able to realize it was actually Mr. Two in disguise, and she ran off, okay? So, it worked out, and it also led to one of the most iconic scenes in the entire manga, where at the end of Alabasta, when the Straw Hats are leaving, they cannot properly say goodbye to Vivi, so they all raise their arms with the X mark as Vivi raises hers as a sign of solidarity, and that they'll always be a crew, and that they'll always be Nakama, and then eventually they'll see each other again, okay? And came up recently when, heading to ELBAPH, when Vivi was now part of the, she's not part of the World Economic Times. I don't think she has a job there, but she's there. And so she used, a marker, like a Sharpie or something, on the image of Luffy. And so when that got published, only the Straw Hats were the ones looking at it. Now, the Straw Hats that actually knew Vivi haven't seen that newspaper article yet. It's only been the Straw Hats like Robin and Jinbei and Frankie that weren't there at Alabasta. Well, Robin was, and she kind of recognizes the mark, but she doesn't remember exactly because she's not the one. She never had the mark herself, but she would have seen the Straw Hats with it, like, very briefly. So she's like, I don't know, I kind of remember something like that, but I don't really know what. And so when the Straw Hats, probably at the end of ELBAPH, see the newspaper article, they'll know Vivi and where she's at, and maybe they'll go and try to meet up with her somewhere, I would hope, okay? But yeah, all of that, one of very iconic parts of the story, that was all Zoro's plan originally. So that's a good plan for Zoro. So I think, let's see, Zoro cutting his legs off, Zoro taking a dip in freezing cold water, Zoro throwing a sword up in the air, and the plan to draw the X's on the arms. I would say that's 3 bad plans and 1 good plan. Actually, no. Okay, where do you rank Zoro making the cool pose on the candle set? I mean, like, not really a bad plan, not really a good plan either. Honestly, though, wait a minute. If you were turning into a wax statue, and you really couldn't do anything else, you might as well have a cool pose. Okay, I'll classify that as a good idea. I'll classify that one as a good idea. All right, so far, out of the 5 plans we've discussed so far, Zoro's got 2 good ones and 3 not-so-good ones. All right, the record isn't great, but it's a little bit more balanced than I thought it would be. All right, what's next? All right, this one is just funny because it actually involves a fight. It's one of my favorite fights in the story. It's a small battle. It's not a big deal. It only lasts 1 chapter. But during Skypiea, Zoro squares off against Braum, one of the members of the Shandorians. He's the dude that has the flash guns. He puts some flash dials in his pistols, and every shot, like, blinds the opponent. And so Zoro came up with a really clever idea in that fight. He was wearing a set of goggles, so he put on his goggles, and he was trying to bluff his opponent into being like, "You're done now. No use using those blinding bullets anymore. I got my special goggles on, so you won't be able to blind me anymore." And Braum is just immediately like, Those don't look like sunglasses. They just look like ordinary goggles. And Zoro's like, shit, he saw through it. That's the perfect example, like rolling a 1 on deception, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to give it a shot. It might work. These are magic goggles. No use in even using your guns anymore. By the way, implying that, like, if that plan would have worked, if Braum would have just, like, believed him that oh, man, he's got his lucky goggles. These guns are useless. Would he just, like, discard his pistols? He still would have used them. So, like, I just find that plan funny because even if it would have worked and Braum would have believed him, he still would have been using the guns. That's how he fights. Oh, no, he's got sunglasses. I gotta fight him hand to hand now. There's no other way. So that's just pretty funny. I mean, like, was that a good plan? It's not cut off your own feet bad plan. So, like, I'm going to say that one was more of just like, give it a shot. Best case scenario, it might make him, like, fumble for a little bit, and then I can launch a surprise attack or something. So, whatever. It wasn't a major part of the story, but I did remember it, and it was pretty funny. Okay. What's up next? The Rocket Man stratagem. This was a plan solely from Zoro as well, right? So the Rocket Man was outside Enies Lobby, and they couldn't get into the proper island because there's this big iron fence that's kind of like blocking off the island, so you can't just ram right into it, right? And so Kokoro was kind of just circling the island until they could figure out a strategy. Zoro's the one with said strategy. He's like, wait a minute. Drive the train right into the fence. And Kokoro's like, all right, here we go. And everyone's like, wait, what, huh? And so at the last minute, Yokozuna, the sumo frog, was like, hit the fence really hard, Yokozuna. And Yokozuna was like, ribbit, boom, and then hit the fence. And the fence got tilted just enough to make a ramp for the Rocket Man to fire up and launch itself over the first gates of Enies Lobby, where it promptly crashed down into Oimo's back and knocked his ass out. Okay, so, like, all right, I mean, dangerous, a little, once again, more on the gambling side of things, but I don't know, it's like one of those things where it's like, okay, we really can't figure out another way to get into the island, although I think it was funny because, like, the Frankie family and Galila were literally fighting to try to open the gates so they could get in, and I guess they were just taking too long, and Zoro was like, okay, we gotta figure out another way to get on the island, and Luffy ran it ahead of everybody because he's Luffy, so Zoro's like, all right, desperate times come for desperate measures, I guess we gotta figure out some way to do it. Frog! Hit the fence! We're going over! And so it worked out. Once again, I think the gambling strategy, but hey, it resulted in a... They got on the island and they were uninjured, so there it is. Okay. But then that is nothing compared to this plan. This is great. This is an awesome one, okay? Later on in Enies Lobby, Zoro and Sage King square off against two members of Cypher Pool 9, Kaku and Jabra, and, you know, due to just unforeseen shenanigans, they end up getting handcuffed together. Sage King and Zoro are cuffed, and neither Jabra or Kaku have the key to their cuffs. They even offered, like, this is kind of stupid, so if either of you guys have, like, the proper handcuffs, we could just unlock you right now and get back to fighting you individually. Unfortunately, they don't, so they have to figure out another way to get out of this. And to be honest with you, Sage King didn't come up with a single plan. Zoro's over there brainstorming. I didn't see Sage King coming up with any strategy. This is why Usopp is always better than Sage King. He would have come up with 6 different plans. Anywho, you have Zoro coming up with the brilliant strategy of, all right, bear with me now. One of us needs to cut off our hands. All right, so not cutting off. Okay, if this plan at ELBAPH involves cutting off any part of your body, this is going to be a totally, it's in the track record of Zoro. I'm just saying, like, it's like, I'm going to try to cut off my feet. Now I'm going to try to cut off my hands, all right? So he was like, yeah, let's just do rock, paper, scissors really quick and see who loses has to cut off their own hand, and it's okay. We have a doctor now. You can just run over to Chopper really quick, and he could probably stitch you back together, probably. So Sage King is like, no, that's a horrible plan. We're not doing that. And Zoro's like, all right, wait a minute. Other plan. And then that was the birth of the greatest Saijo Owazamono graded blade of all time, the Sage King sword, the great nose sword, right? Or whatever that was called, right? Where, you know, he basically gives his sword over to Usopp. No, I'm sorry, Sage King. Usopp was gone at the time. He wasn't even on Enies Lobby. What am I thinking of? Anyway, Sage King picked up Zoro's sword at the time. I think it was the Yubashiri. and he just grabs Sage King's like belt and just uses that as the hilt, and is just like, all right, it's on. It's on now. And so, I mean, like, once again, dumb idea, but hey, if it works, right? Like, did either of them die? No. Did either of them have to hack off part of their own body to get out? No. It was able to work as a stopgap long enough for Nami to show up with the proper key and allow them, Sage King and Zoro to get freed. By the way, which resulted in one of the sickest end of chapter panels ever. Look at this. Zoro in the center, Sage King striking a pose off to the left, Nami's off the right, also looking cool as hell. Love this panel right here. It's amazing. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, like, hey, it worked. It worked. When you're in a pinch, you got to think of some outside ideas, outside the box, as it were, and Zoro did that, and it was able to work off, and they didn't even have to sever off a body part. So, hey, if that's the bar we're working with here, if that's how low it is, then it's like, whatever, fine, we did it. All right, I'll classify that as a good plan. Okay, now, I need you to all prepare yourselves for this next one. This is the plan, the end-all plans, ladies and gentlemen, right? Like, if Zoro slicing off his own feet at Little Garden was, like, the shittiest plan he's ever come up with, this one is like the, piece de resistance. This is the coup de grace. This is the carpe diem of Zoro plans, all right? This is the one, right? And it's actually not even the one, because Zoro, when he was going up against Pika at Dressrosa, had not one, not two, not three, not four, but 5 plans in his back pocket to take this stone giant down. So to give you context, Pika has the ability of the Ishi no Mi. It's the stone assimilation fruit. It's not a Logia, but it allows him to assimilate with any type of rock. In this case, he assimilates with a whole damn mountain and is, stomping through Dressrosa, about to crush King Riku Dole III and Viola and Usopp and a bunch of other people that are standing there. A lot of people were going to die, right? And so Zoro sees this, and Zoro's been trying to fight Pika this entire damn arc, but his ability is so damn annoying. Every time he slices up the stone statue, Pika just, transmits his consciousness to another part and then slinks away, and it's really, really annoying. It was an extraordinarily frustrating fight for Zoro, if nothing else. Not that Pika was stronger than Zoro, it was just he was annoying, okay? So Zoro is now rushing towards Pika's giant stone self to try to cut him down, and he's coming up with all these different strategies, and he's like, okay, I gotta try to save everybody and defeat Pika. Strategy number 1, I fire a flying slash technique, the pound-a-hole, like the 1080 caliber Phoenix or whatever. However, he was way too far away, and he's like, no, I could fire a slash, and it might hit him, but it's not going to be doing enough damage. It might cut him up, but it's not going to knock him down, and his ability is so annoying that it's not even going to do anything anyway. Plan number 2, Zoro jumps on Pika's back. That's not going to work either. He's still way too far away. By the time he runs over there, he's probably going to crush everybody. And also, trying to scale his back, he might fall down. He'd just probably land in the town somewhere. So plan 2 is off the books. All right, strategy number 3. Zoro yells really loud and tries to get everybody's attention so that they run off and evacuate so Pika can't crush them. But the whole town, the whole island is in chaos right now. They're not going to be able to hear him. Plan number 4. Okay, I'll just use a transponder snail to call them. Problem is, he doesn't have a transponder snail, so I don't even know why that one was even in there, but whatever. Plan 5. Tactics number 5. Just got to fly through the air at breakneck speed and cut them all down in one go. That's the best plan he's got, and honestly, it was the best one out of all 5 of them. I really can't see any other strategies. Maybe if he had a 6th plan, maybe that would have been better. I don't know, but we stopped at 5. Okay, so that's what we got. All right. So, luckily, you have a large man there that specializes in throwing people really far. You have Captain Orlumbus of the Yonta Maria Fleet, a member of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet, which a lot of people forget about Orlumbus, but he's like a big barrel-chested dude, and he knows how to throw things, all right? That's kind of his old shtick. He doesn't have a devil fruit. He doesn't really even have hockey. He just picks people up and throws them. I mean, hey, if it works for you, it works for you. So anyway, he goes up, Zoro goes up to him, and he's just like, hey, you're the guy throwing people around. It seems like you're good at that. I need you to throw me, just bear with me now, at the giant stone man mountain. And Orlumbus is like, okay. This isn't the kind of technique. I don't throw people safely, right? This isn't a ride at Six Flags or Disney or something, right? You're going straight towards it. You're probably going to get hurt. And Zoro's like, yeah, but I know. I have a plan. Don't worry. I went through all 5 plans. This was the best one. And Orlumbus is like, oh, okay, well, all right then. And so he uses his Admiral Killer Bowling, and he yeets Zoro as hard as he can. He breaks the damn sound barrier, probably. Like the different shockwaves through the air as Zoro's traveling through. He unsheaths his sword. He charges up Armament Hockey, and he uses Ichidai Sansen Dai Sensekai! This is the greatest plan in the history of manga. I don't care. Doesn't matter whatever other plans Zoro had at this point that maybe don't cut the mustard. This one plan makes up for it because of how goddamn cool it was. So does this plan work? Yes, it does. Zoro manages to slice apart Pika's body in midair. He slices him in half, and then in half again, and then in half again, and he just kind of keeps doing that until there's like a small piece of stone left. And Zoro's fought against Pika long enough at this point that he knows he kind of can tell the living stone from the dead stone, and so he launches an attack against Pika. Pika makes the biggest rookie mistake at this point in the story, and that's going full body armament hockey. You never go full body armament hockey. That is basically a tall tale sign that you're going to get your ass kicked, all right? So he does that. Zoro uses his technique again, 3,000 worlds, slices up Pika. However, we have a bunch of the rubble. All of the rubble of the Man Mountain is now falling down, and so at that point, Zoro has King Riku Dole III. Not King Riku Dole III. King Riku Dole III! It's time for you to do something about this! King Riku would be like, what? Huh? Was I part of this plan? I don't know anything. I don't have a devil fruit. I don't know how to stop this. King Elisabello II of the Proton's Kingdom, with his King Punch that he had been charging up previously, he uses that as essentially a street sweeper to blast away all of the rubble harmlessly out into the ocean so it doesn't land on the town. That would have been really funny if, like, all of the rubble was falling and then Zoro immediately just calls to a random person, like, you! Viola, you stop it. Viola's like, wait, what? I wasn't in on this plan. What am I supposed to do? Right? It's just like, that was the final part. But no, it worked out. It worked out, and my God, was it so damn cool. That scene is one of the sickest Zoro moments in the whole damn story, all right? So those are some of Zoro's like greatest hits, all right, and the one at the end there kind of makes up for all the other ones. Trying to cut off your own feet, whatever. That scene makes up for it. And so now, though, that brings us to ELBAPH, where once again Zoro's putting his old thinking cap on, trying to come up with a strategy to deal with this Domi Reversied evil Dorian Bragi attacking Elder Jarl situation. So that is something that the plan is going to revolve around. He is currently heading toward the Western Village with Hyruden and Stanson. Everybody else kind of separated into different groups. Luffy and Loki are still in the Primordial World. They're not even up there yet. And so they're trying to deal with Dorian Bragi. And so I had no idea what the strategy was, but I was, in the chat yesterday, and a lot of people were saying that it made the most sense, and I'm going to go along with this one because this would tie back to Little Garden and when they first met Dorian Bragi. This will really work if this was actually Zoro's plan. If this turns out to be Zoro's plan, then I will put it in the categories of good plans. This actually is good. Turn Dorian Bragi against one another. Basically get them to remember that they were actually, like, not enemies, but rivals, right? And they fought this battle on Little Garden for over 100 years that originally started with a hunting contest, but they kind of forgot what it even was about after a while. They just kind of started fighting just for the sake of fighting, right? Because there had to be a winner. There were all these draws. There had to be a winner, right? And so remember, they're still in the middle of doing that. It's just that Oimo and Kashi convinced them to come back to ELBAPH to take a quick break, take a shower, get some fresh weapons, and then resume their duel a little bit later, right? They have still yet to resolve that duel, okay? So, the Domi Reversi, crucially, does not remove your personality. You still kind of are you. It's just that whatever orders Emu gives to you, you kind of take precedence over everything else, right? And it seems like it sort of like twists the way that you look at the world. Like when they were talking about when Emu gave them the order to go and kill Elder Jarl, it's not like that, like, yeah, we hate Elder Jarl now. No, it was more of like, Elder Jarl, the man we always respected? Yeah, we did respect him. But he's old and weak now, so he should die. Yeah, that makes sense. We respect him, so he should die. It's kind of like that. It like twists your own personality in a way so that you're not doing it like a mindless automaton. It's sort of like you beginning. It's like Emu forcing you to rationalize a way to make it make sense, right? But you're still technically kind of you. So the plan of Zoro trying to get Dory and Broggy to fight one another could work. The only thing is, what level of control does Emu really have? Like, so let's say Zoro tries to convince them, like, hey, which one of you is going to fight Elder Jarl? Which one of you is going to get the finishing blow? It better be the strongest out of both of you. Who is it? And then, you know, Dory and Broggy are like, wait a minute, he's got a point. Broggy, which one of us are stronger? I don't know. We never decided. We were in the middle of a duel. Duel? Well, right now, I'm super strong. I could kick your ass. I'm even stronger. I could kick your ass, too. And then they just start fighting. But couldn't Emu just kind of like, what are you fools doing? I said to kill Elder Jarl. Now do it at once. Would Dory and Broggy be able to disobey the order? Because it's kind of a weird thing where, like, Emu gave them the order to kill Elder Jarl, but the way they're viewing it is still from their own perspective and personality. That's like, yes, we heard. We will kill Elder Jarl after we figure out which one is stronger. So they're not technically disobeying Emu's order. They're still going to do it just the way that it's going to buy them more time, right? Now, if Emu said something like, stop fighting each other and then go kill Elder Jarl, would they have to listen to Emu? I would assume that they would, unless you get something involved where, like, there is a limit to Emu's control with the Domi Reversi, right? So even it doesn't matter if you know, Emu phrases it like, stop fighting one another, go kill Elder Jarl right this very moment, do not waste a single more second on these petty squabbles. And they're like, okay, Lord Emu-sama, we will do that. Or if it's like, they're so lost in their battle lust and they're just like fighting each other constantly and they're regenerating and fighting and regenerating and fighting that it's just like they're not even listening to Emu anymore. Like, they're just lost in that. So it's very possible that maybe like certain emotions could override or at least make it so that they don't obey Emu directly. You know what I mean? So like their emotions of like all the rivalry that they've had for 100 years might override the orders given. And if, let's say, Dory ended up winning and defeated Broggy, then Dory would pick up his sword pitchfork thing and then try to kill Elder Jarl. Like, the orders would still be given. It's just, it's going to be in a roundabout way like this. I don't know, but I like that idea. And there's a couple of other ones, too, I saw that were funny. Like, what if Zoro tries cutting off Dory and Broggy's feet? I'm like, well, you know, we don't actually know if they can regenerate. We don't know if the Domi Reversi giants can regenerate. We've seen it when Rox defeated his family. They didn't seem to regenerate. And then when Broggy got his arm blasted off, the arm kind of floated up and is kind of like hovering where it used to be. But there's like Broggy has no wrist right now. Like, his wrist is gone. It's just kind of like his hand and then the rest of his arm. But it's like there's like this invisible, just like it's just empty space, but it's being like held together that way. So I don't think the Domi Reversi giants actually can regenerate in the same way the Gods Knights can, right? Because they don't have the covenants. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks to everybody that helped me with the list of Zoro's greatest feats yesterday. That was a lot of fun. See you, everybody. We'll see later this week on what he's got up his sleeve. This will be Tekking signing out.